Thank you for joining the Once Changing the World, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today, I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Jack Mccauley, who's an inventor, professor, and innovator in residence at Jacobs Institute for Design Innovation at UC Berkeley, and was amongst the early co-founders at Oculus VR.
Oh,
Jack was the chief engineer leading the hardware and intellectual property development for the Guitar Hero franchise. The Guitar Hero franchise has been called one of the most influential video games of the 21st century. The series has sold more than 65 million units worldwide. Jack designed and built the Oculus DK1 and DK2 virtual reality headsets prior to the
and that
2014 by Facebook for $2 billion. He holds numerous US patents for inventions in software, audio effects, virtual reality, motion control, computer peripherals, and video games hardware and controllers. So, Jack, it's truly an honor and a privilege to have you on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time. Why don't we start with the backstory here?
so I was this was in 2012, June of 2012. I get a call from a guy I worked with at Activision on Guitar Hero. This guy Greg goes, "Hey, Brendan Iribe, I think he was called Brendan Trexler like that. This guy's going to call you. He's got something that he needs help with." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, show it to you when he gets there." So he comes here and I see him at the front door. This is our research facility is private. They show up here at the door. Brendan shows up here at the door and he has something in his hand. I look down at it. He's got a MacBook Pro with Boot Camp on it running Windows and a demo game. And he comes in, I shake his hand, we sit down, and he shows it to me. I put it on and I was kind of blown away because I had seen these VR devices before. And this was the best one I'd seen, the best visual presentation. And there was a game written around it by another company that we just did as a demo so we could show it to people. They go, "We want to go to LA and we can meet down in Los Angeles with the rest of the team members," of which there were three. It was Brendan, Palmer, Mike Antonoff, and myself. That was it at the time. Nate Mitchell, who is also a co-founder, was working, and I meet these guys, and my thought was, they're too young. This is a gray hair business they're in. You have to be experienced doing this stuff. You can't build a consumer prototype or consumer pilot run of anything without having seasoned people on board, and that was me. And we're talking, and they go, "We want to do a Kickstarter, a presentation. We're going to launch this thing on Kickstarter, DK1. I didn't even know what Kickstarter was. I go, "Okay, and how many units do you think we need?" And we had some launch numbers, not very big, on the order of 10,000 units or something like that. So this big film crew shows up here. They interview me, and I'm prominently featured in the video with Palmer. And a few days later, they put it live online, and it was phenomenally successful, to put it mildly. The buzz that was built around the company early on, the story of Palmer Luckey, 18 years old, doing this thing it's just a wonderful story, and it's very intriguing. And it was just that, a story that we told. It was phenomenally successful. On the day we launched, we overshot our estimate of selling 10,000. We sold, I think there's a thing, 11,000. And then the next time I looked at it, we were like at 70,000. We had some traction. We had this great PR and great stuff that Brendan put together. Brendan, I'll just say a couple words about him. That's probably I know we had smart people at Oculus. Is probably the smartest guy there, not in a programmer's sense of smart, but more of a sales smart, and the ability to read people. He's very, very good at it, and it's just a natural gift he has. So this is the story of Oculus. A lot of great folks. I really liked Brendan and Michael Antonoff a lot. Mike, I consider them friendly they don't call it friendsness, right? They're not really your friends. You can be friendly with them, but you're going to go out and have pizza with them or whatever, or beer or whatever it is you'd like to do, but they're not really your friends. You got to watch, you got to be on guard and be careful. I had to find someone to manufacture them, and very challenging. Nobody wants 70,000 pieces because the engineering enterprise in China is significant. You see the office in Irvine with 120 people, but really the bulk of the work on the hardware is being done in China. And there's a whole staff of tooling engineers, molding engineers, materials engineers, 25 or 30 engineers, experienced, seasoned engineers working on it. We opened up an office there, and we had a staff there finally. This was in early 2013. So we were hiring over there to manage the production and so forth. So we had to figure out how to get it produced. We were turned down by Foxconn. We were turned down by Jetta Manufacturing. Foxconn makes a lot of stuff, primarily Apple stuff, but it's a big contract manufacturer. Jetta makes toys, electronic toys and things like that. Not interested. It's just too small for them. And so we had to find a boutique level manufacturer who's got good qualities. And we found one. Oculus people, not being familiar with contract manufacturing, were panicked at every sort of small change that was done. I remember that. It was and then there were bugs in firmware and controllers and things like that they had programmed, caused problems. But we got around those things, and so the entire development of getting into production from Palmer Luckey's prototype. Palmer was in China with me also. To finishing it was 90 days, because they announced the Kickstarter launch to start on a certain day. Like we start shipping here, and that was our target. But 90 days to do that is a monumental Herculean effort. So DK2 comes along, a different system, different tracking system. I had less to do with the hardware on DK2, but a similar type thing, but it took longer. We built all the production and test equipment for DK2, everything we designed at Oculus. So we had to build the production test equipment plus the hardware for the headset. The story that's being told now is very different than the story of what really happened, but it doesn't make any difference. We got it done and nailed it. Mark Zuckerberg shows up at Oculus to look around and see what he's buying, right? And I go to China. I'm in China. This is in March of 2014, and Brendan called me. I was working on DK2. Brendan calls me and he goes, guess what? And I go, what? It was 3 o'clock in the morning, woke me up. He goes, we sold the company and you're super wealthy. Something like that is what he said. And I said, well, that's great. Make a long story short, it was a positive experience, and a little bruising in terms of the workload, but the people were great. With few exceptions, I liked everyone there, and they were nice folks. I think politics creep into a popular venture like that, and it's just inevitable that happens. It's just the way that kind of stuff goes. And I think the politics for me got a little thick for take me out of my comfort zone. I just don't dig stuff like that, and I didn't run into too much of that at a studio. I mean, everyone's working on a game, trying to make it happen, and no one's concerned about who looks good and who. For me, I was already doing all right. I was doing fine. I didn't, it's nice to have it. It's my comfort zone with money is because I'm a like middle class, blue collar kind of class. That's the class I grew up in, and I could do fine living in an apartment. I'm perfectly happy. It doesn't matter to me. I don't live in an apartment. I have a nice house and stuff. But when you start accumulating things, cars, boats, trailers, it starts to bear down on you. For me, it does. I'm not comfortable there. I'm in the process of stripping that stuff away. With the money that I made at Oculus, I donated a lot of it to charities, various things. Understand. Paul Jacobs is a chairman of Qualcomm, and him and I built a research facility on campus. I misnamed it. It's a maker space, but it's part of the engineering department. And what it is, it's like a big sandbox where people can go and make things. We have 3D printers, we have laser cutters, we have all kinds of hardware and tools and programming. It's a multidisciplinary thing. It's a design center, and it's teaching students how to do designs. This is sort of what I'm doing now. I teach there. Also, I teach vehicle engineering. I'm a car nut, so I teach electric vehicle design, physics of motors, batteries, controllers, the whole thing. I co-teach it with Professor Scott Moore there, who's a real PhD. So I spend my time there, and I like being around young people. I really like the staff at Berkeley. I really, really like the people there, more so than other places I've worked. I'm not exposed to the politics of the place, which is, I'm sure, is heavy. It's a huge thing. It's a big, giant place. I have a private foundation, and this private foundation it was opened right as COVID struck, and so it's kind of in limbo. The idea was to bring people here and teach them how to use tools and give them some salable skills.
Facebook itself is kind of rebranded to Meta, and the metaverse in the hype cycle. So I want to talk about that, but I want to briefly, get your views on, when you kind of, joined, with Pamela Key, Brendan Ribby and team. If you could kind of briefly address what were the, some of the key design decisions you made when creating DK and Honor and
the DK1 is essentially sort of a cobbled together thing that John Carmack and Palmer put together, along with a lot of help from Mark Bolas at USC. Palmer claims that he got the lenses off eBay out of a magnifying glass thing that you're reading glass thing. It's probably true. And so the lenses and everything. So I got that working prototype, the one that Brendan carried in here. We did it. My industrial designer changed the outlook on it and the shape, and so it's a copy of what Palmer built, pretty much DK1. It was the only thing on the market at the time. We didn't have a competitor, although there were other people working on it on virtual reality at the time. We had competition at the time. DK2 rolled around, and so we needed to have a mechanism to track head position. You see, DK1. You can get you turning your head and stuff, but if you're moving forward, it can't really detect that. You have to use a controller to move forward or something like that. It can't tell certain things, and that's because of the tracking system that was being used. It was basically we copied a Hillcrest tracking system to a degree, same sort of chipset, slightly different. And but for DK2, we had a vision system, and DK2 is a seated experience. In other words, you have to sit down, and there's a camera that looks at your head, and there's little flashing lights underneath the plastic that flash, and from that it extracts your head position. So you can go like this and move back and forward, and it won't lose any of the tracking. So this is the difference. Our competitor had a room experience, which allows you to walk around in a room. They use these poles, and there was a transmitter on the pole that transmit these laser lines, and there were photosensors on it that saw the laser lines sweep by, and that gave your actual position in room. It was vastly superior to DK2, but DK2 is a seated experience for playing cockpit games or what have you. So that was our competitor, and that sort of set the benchmark for what VR should be. The HTC Vive coming off, a seated position is what the sort of the benchmark was. Selling the Quest, which is $350 or $400 or $600 or $1,500 into a country like that's very difficult, because it's not a necessity, right? It offers you entertainment, but it doesn't answer phone calls, and it doesn't do a lot of things that a mobile phone will do. And there has to be a way to provide financing to people from other places that don't have the $1,500 laying around. A lot of places don't. And so this is a problem with VR. is the high cost of entry. High cost of entry, even at $350. For $350, I can buy a PlayStation 5. Okay. So why wouldn't I just buy a PlayStation 5 to play video games? Why do I want to buy the Quest? PlayStation 5 has thousands of titles that you can play. It's streaming. I mean, it plugs into the internet. You can download your content from the internet. And this is the problem, is that they have to figure out how to control the cost. Now they're talking about Quest Pro 2, I think it is. One of the latest headset is $1,500. I wouldn't buy it at $1,500. I mean, I can afford it. I just think it's expensive. And that limits your market, right? And if you're selling 20 million units, that's really pretty good. That's good. There has to be a reason for people to buy it. There has to be some really good content for it, a game or something that everyone wants to play. And there just isn't. And this is the mystery. It's like, how do you produce something like that and retain that, keep that business going without repeating, titles and so forth to have a reoccurring revenue on? This is the issue. So metaverse is the answer, I think. And I think metaverse is a great idea. I'm a proponent of it. I think it's a great idea to have your own economy, have your own. You can have a job in the metaverse. You could have its own currency, the meta, whatever. I mean, some games have their own currency, anyways. And so I think it's a cool idea. Now the execution of that is a little weird. They launched Horizon Worlds, which is Facebook's sort of metaverse thing. And I kind of think that it kind of bombed a little bit. And that was because the staff at Facebook's not familiar with how to launch a game, how to do the launch. You have to roll it out in a special way. And they didn't. It was these pieces that they would show us. And it was just kind of laughable, really. It was just strange. So I think they kind of blew that. And how to recover from that, that's going to be challenging to do it. So the content for VR was the metaverse, and that's the intriguing part. I mean, you could walk around and meet people in bars or go to a disco or whatever, or play a game. You could exist inside of it. So it's an intriguing idea, and I think it's a really cool idea. A video game has to have strategy, and it has to have a social component. These are the two things. What's the strategy in the metaverse? What are you trying to accomplish there? That's the mystery. It's not clear what the goal is, and a good game has a great story associated with it. It's telling a story like a movie. It's played for you like a movie. So that has to be. That's what's the entertainment component. There's also a social aspect to modern video games, which is interacting with people all over the world and playing with people all over the world. So I think it's rife with challenges, and the two, of course, the high cost of entry, high point especially for people in other places, not here necessarily, and also the content. These are the challenges for the metaverse as Meta's defined it.
Right. Yeah. So I completely agree. When you say that metaverse, the virtual reality industry has got challenges because it's still its nascent stage, and the price point is something which is a barrier. But eventually, possibly, I see that maybe the glasses getting something like as light as this. So somebody who's been one of the founders who was driving this the Oculus headset. What are your views on the future of the virtual reality and the metaverse industry? How do you think it's going to shape up? When do you think that we're going to see something as light as this?
Well, about 12 or 13 years ago, Google launched a device that you wore on your face. It had a camera on it, and it was a smart glasses product. And I thought it was a great idea to have that. What I don't want to do is pull my phone out all the time and look at my messages. I just want to be able to see it projected into my eye. And so I think you're right. I think that there's a market for a spectacle or glasses that have smart capabilities. Now the execution of that is challenging. If your glasses, when you're, for instance, you're going to project something into someone's eye through a waveguide or something like that, where the projectors on the side of the glasses, it goes through the channel in the glass and then shoots out into your eyeball. If they move the glasses around, it's going to a different spot, right? So these have to be fixed on the fixed points of your head with straps. That's VR. So talking about two different things. You're talking about a smart glasses and virtual reality. Virtual reality is pretty different. That's a completely artificial environment. Smart glasses or augmented reality, whatever you want to call it, is a different beast. Really, it is kind of different. That's something where there's probably the most traction. I think I'm looking for a product like that. I haven't seen one, but so the Google product failed. The failed in much of the similar way to the way Meta rolled out. They raised people's expectations about it, and when they got it, it's a developer kit, right? There's not much on it. What applications do you run? Well, there's not much. So this was the problem, and I think Facebook has kind of repeated that rollout. The execution of the rollout of it in a way, because the application stuff isn't ready yet, or it's kind of fragmented. So this is the challenge. And to your question, I think there's a high value in having something you can wear on your face and get stuff beamed into your eye. Information like a text message comes up, you want to see what it is. I don't want to pull my phone out. It just shows up in your glasses. So
yeah, there are a lot of nations around the world, obviously, I mean, who are just the growing economy and obviously don't have any means to possibly, buy a headset costing maybe $400 or $500. But maybe in the next few years, your interface will move from us carrying technology to wearing technology, where or phones could converge, or phones and computer could converge into a one single wearable device, and then possibly maybe that could be compelling enough for people to buy this. But my last question, your journey has been, you started in the gaming industry, you evolved to Oculus virtual reality headset, and now you're getting into EV, electric vehicles, and cybersecurity. Could you talk about that, and maybe also share your advice to engineering and possibly design students sitting here in India, in the age of automation, because today we've been catapulted in the world where creativity was the last bastion. We thought that creativity is something which AI will not touch, but then there's something called a generative AI, and you've got text to speech, text to 3D, text to video. So share, besides sharing your journey, your future journey with your EV mobility, also share advice to engineering and design students, in the face of AI automation.
I'll talk about. Those are good points. I will talk about the problem that we face in the United States right now. There's a problem, a labor shortage. We can't find quality. It's a smaller country. When you compare it, we have 320 or 30 million people or something like that, compared to India, what are you, 1.4 billion right now, right? So, it's a much larger country with a much larger pool of labor. All of my neighbors are Indian engineers. Just about every family neighborhood. I have great neighbors though. With a few exceptions, they're really good neighbors, and they all work in the Silicon Valley. So we import labor, and because we can't produce enough of it, the demand for engineering talent is very high here. The way we view education is different than other countries. I believe. I may have that wrong, but that's my hunch. Other countries, it's a high valued luxury thing, and here it's taken for granted a little bit. So improving education here is a must. Improving the quality of the education here. When I grew up here, mostly, I lived in Europe, but I grew up here mostly. I was educated in high school here. It was number one in the United States. California was number one. Now it's near the bottom. We went completely the opposite direction. Why is that? I have no idea. But funding is part of it. I know the way that tax laws changed here in the 70s, part of it. A lot of it is just the sort of influence the culture has on things here. So on the EV thing, an electric vehicle allows you to recover the energy of braking the car. When you drive a car, you put the brakes on. In a gas car, it's lost forever. That is dissipated as heat from the inertia and the kinetic energy of the vehicle. In an electric vehicle, it's recovered in batteries. It's stored inside the batteries. That's the big advantage. And a good EV design, like take Tesla, for instance. I have a Tesla. It's not my favorite car. They're about 90% efficient. That's electrons going in out of the charging station to running the wheels. And the losses are about 10%, right? So it's very, very good. A gasoline car, gasoline powered cars only. We ran experiments here I wanted to find out, like, what's the combustion efficiency of fuels. So we built a rig to measure that. It fires a piston in a tube, and then we have a high-speed camera. We can see it travel up the tube, and a computer that measures the time and the pressure inside the tube. From that, we derived what the actual yield is from various fuels. 29%. 29% of the calories that go into the car actually move the wheels. The rest is dissipated as heat, is lost as combustion, thermodynamic heat. It's the chemical process. That's the big advantage. So I'm going, well, why don't we just fill up cars with electrons? I mean, it's much more efficient, and the cars are fast too. Like my Tesla's pretty fast. That's really my interest. It's like the environmental stuff is cool, but really I like the speed, the power. To summarize it, that is the advantage. You recover the braking energy in the battery. You're using the battery as a brake, and the energy is stored in the battery and then re-released when you put your foot on the gas pedal again, the throttle. So that's the benefit of it. Now, do I think it cannot be stopped, this movement? It's so convenient to plug your car in at home. I plugged in last night, came out in the morning, it's fully charged. I never go to a gas station. The other thing is an electric vehicle lasts much, much longer. I'm not talking about the batteries. I'm talking about the powertrain. And there's far fewer moving parts, far less friction and rubbing of parts together and things like that. You know, an electric vehicle can last 1 million to 2 million miles. And what they do is they go out of style. It's not that the car wears out. It just gets ugly as time goes on and old. You want the latest body, right? Why not just replace the body? Like retrofit the body. I think that's a great idea. You could ship cars, electric cars, to other countries and have their bodies retrofitted, new body put on it, and it's a cheap car. I think it's a great idea. So that's my inspiration on it. The going fast is the best part, but it just makes sense from an engineering, not being wasteful, and it just makes sense. I just like the simplicity in an EV. It's just very, very simple. It's like when, I don't know if you were a kid, if you had a little electric car that you had with a battery, you put it on a track or something like that. It's basically just that. And it's so simple and very few moving parts, and the lifespan on these things could potentially be millions of miles. A big rig, which is a big truck, for hauling stuff across on highways here. Everything's done at trucks here. We have trains, but they don't go everywhere. Those last 2 million miles. That's the lifespan of a big truck. That's how long they last. Just think if cars lasted that long. The raw materials that you would need would be less. It would be less harm to the environment from the manufacturing, the paint and the chemicals and things like that. It's all a win. It's a win. Now, some countries don't have the electrical infrastructure to support that, but they didn't have gas stations there 70 years ago either. So someday they'll build better infrastructure for EVs. It's the capitalist market that pushes it. It really is. It's the demand. This climate crisis and the climate change stuff, and I don't call it a crisis. I call it we're going to have to adapt. The Earth will have to adapt to a warmer environment.
Right. Yeah. So there's so many complications. You touched upon so many subjects, and possibly maybe EVs are the way ahead for the future of mobility. But then you touched upon climate change, climate crisis. And there's so many dynamics at play. You mentioned about rains and the heating up, and I think globally, I think we seeing this drastic weather pattern, and I think a consumption pattern needs to be looked at, because we constantly consuming without any conservation. And I hope that designers such as yourself, create things which, creates a circular economy where there is, innovations which fits into the circular economy. Because I think most of the innovations also that we create, we solve one problem, then we create another problem. So thank you, Jock. Really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Your journey from the gaming industry to the virtual reality and now to the EVs. Wish you lots of success. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
No problem. All right.